Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a story that's been making waves, a rehab center facing serious accusations. This isn't just about one facility, it's about trust, accountability, and the vulnerable people seeking help within its walls. What happens when the very organization meant to help is accused of wrongdoing? Let's find out. At the heart of this controversy lies a name that often sparks debate: Scientology. The rehab center in question has direct ties to the Church of Scientology, an organization with its fair share of controversy. Reports suggest that Scientology's influence runs deep within the rehab center, potentially impacting everything from its treatment methods to its financial dealings. Is this a case of a religious group extending a helping hand, or is there something more calculated at play? One of the most troubling aspects is the lack of transparency surrounding the rehab center's operations. Despite being a registered charity, the center has been secretive about its connection to Scientology and its financial dealings. Without access to clear information, it's nearly impossible to determine the extent of the alleged wrongdoing. Our goal today is to shed light on this complex story and encourage a much-needed conversation about accountability and transparency. To understand the gravity of the situation, we need to rewind and look at the rehab center's history. When it first opened, the center presented itself as a beacon of hope for those struggling with addiction. Initially, the center garnered positive attention from the community and quickly established itself as a reputable institution. However, beneath this veneer of altruism, a more complicated story was brewing. The center's ties to Scientology, while not explicitly hidden, were downplayed in its early days. As the years passed, whispers about the rehab center's practices and its connection to Scientology began to circulate. Former employees and patients started sharing their experiences, alleging that things weren't quite as they seemed. One of the first red flags was the center's treatment methodology, heavily integrated with Scientology teachings. Financial irregularities also started cropping up, with allegations of misappropriated funds. What began as hushed rumors quickly escalated into a full-blown scandal. To grasp the weight of the allegations, it's crucial to understand the baggage that comes with its association with Scientology. The Church of Scientology has faced accusations ranging from financial impropriety to cult-like practices. This association has raised serious questions about the rehab center's true motives and the potential influence of Scientology's controversial practices. Are patients truly receiving unbiased care, or are they being subjected to Scientology teachings without their full knowledge? The charity Regulator took notice of the growing concerns and launched a full-blown investigation. These investigations involved combing through financial records, interviewing former employees and patients, and scrutinizing every aspect of the organization's operations. The goal is to uncover the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. The Regulator's findings were shocking, painting a picture of an organization that had strayed far from its intended purpose. The report, once released, sent shockwaves through the community. One of the most damning revelations was the extent of the financial misconduct within the rehab center. The investigation uncovered evidence that charitable donations were being funneled away from their intended purpose. The center had been using donations to fund lavish lifestyles for its top executives and finance questionable business ventures. This deliberate lack of transparency spoke volumes about the center's true intentions. The financial misconduct was bad enough, but the center's culture of secrecy truly shocked investigators. From the outset, the center had been evasive about its ties to Scientology. When questioned, the center's leadership would often deflect or deny any significant connection. Documents revealed that the center was financially and operationally intertwined with Scientology. This pattern of secrecy made it impossible for potential patients to make informed decisions about their care. The rehab center's actions had far-reaching consequences, leaving a trail of broken promises and shattered trust. Former patients felt betrayed and manipulated, their vulnerabilities exploited for financial gain and ideological indoctrination. The community felt a profound sense of disappointment and anger, questioning the motives of those who claimed to be helping others. The question now is, what will be done to hold the center accountable and ensure such abuse of trust never happens again? One of the most disturbing aspects is the rehab center's persistent lack of transparency. The center's leadership, when confronted with questions, consistently resorted to vague answers and carefully crafted deflections. This lack of transparency was incredibly frustrating for investigators and dangerous for patients seeking help. How can someone make an informed decision about their care when the organization refuses to be upfront about its practices? The investigation revealed a pattern of pressure and manipulation, particularly regarding Scientology. Former patients alleged that while the center didn't explicitly force them to convert, they created an environment where it was difficult to say no. They described subtle forms of coercion, like being ostracized from group activities if they refused to participate in Scientology-related programs. That's not ethical treatment, it's a betrayal of trust. Despite the evidence and public outcry, the question of accountability remains. The revocation of the rehab center's charity status was a significant step, but some argue it's not enough. They demand justice for the patients who were manipulated and exploited, calling for criminal charges and restitution. This case is about holding powerful institutions accountable, protecting the vulnerable, and demanding transparency. As the layers of the rehab center's deception were peeled back, the true extent of Scientology's influence became clear. Former patients and employees shared their experiences, painting a disturbing picture of a facility where patients were subjected to Scientology's controversial practices. These weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a systematic approach to indoctrinate patients under the pretense of providing care. This was a deliberate scheme to exploit vulnerable individuals for their own gain. Auditing spiritual guidance or psychological manipulation. Auditing is a cornerstone of Scientology belief. Proponents describe it as spiritual counseling for self-awareness. Critics argue it's manipulative and controlling. Individuals hold electrodes connected to an e-meter. Auditors ask probing questions about past traumas. The potential for abuse is significant. Critics say auditing can be invasive and manipulative. It pushes individuals to relive traumas. This information can be used to control them. Questioning the cure evidence versus ideology. One of the most concerning aspects of this entire situation is the rehab center's blatant disregard for evidence-based treatment. While legitimate rehab facilities rely on proven therapeutic methods, the center in question chose to prioritize Scientology ideology over scientifically validated approaches. Addiction is a complex disease, requiring a multifaceted approach to treatment. Effective rehab programs typically incorporate a combination of therapies, including individual counseling, group therapy, medication-assisted treatment, and lifestyle changes, all backed by scientific research and clinical trials. The rehab center, however, seemed to operate under the assumption that Scientology held all the answers, that its teachings were superior to any evidence-based approach. This unwavering belief in ideology over evidence put patients at risk, denying them access to potentially life-saving treatment options. By prioritizing Scientology's teachings, the rehab center demonstrated a blatant disregard for the well-being of its patients. It wasn't about providing the best possible care. It was about pushing an agenda, even if it meant jeopardizing the health and recovery of those they claimed to be helping. A crisis of faith. The impact on patients and families. The consequences of the rehab center's deception reverberated far beyond its walls, leaving behind a trail of shattered lives and broken families. Patients who had entered the center seeking help for their addictions emerged feeling betrayed, manipulated, and more lost than ever before. Some patients, now ardent believers in Scientology, severed ties with family and friends who questioned their newfound faith. Others, disillusioned and traumatized by their experiences, struggled to reconcile their beliefs with the reality of what they had endured. Families were torn apart, caught in the crossfire of the rehab center's web of deceit. Parents watched helplessly as their children, once bright and full of promise, succumbed to the influence of Scientology, their lives consumed by a belief system they didn't understand. The emotional toll was immeasurable, leaving behind a legacy of pain, confusion, and mistrust. The rehab center, entrusted with the well-being of those battling addiction, had instead exploited their vulnerabilities, leaving behind a trail of broken lives and shattered dreams. The hammer drops. Charity status revoked. After months of painstaking investigation, the charity regulator reached a verdict. The evidence was overwhelming, the breaches of trust undeniable. The rehab center, once lauded for its mission of healing, had been exposed as a hotbed of deception, manipulation, and financial impropriety. The regulator's decision was swift and decisive. The rehab center's charity status was revoked, stripping them of their legitimacy and their ability to solicit charitable donations. It was a monumental blow, a public condemnation of their unethical practices. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it was a seismic shift in the landscape. The center, stripped of its charitable cloak, was now exposed for what it truly was, a business operating under the guise of compassion, prioritizing profit and ideology over the well-being of vulnerable individuals. The revocation sent shockwaves through the community and beyond, serving as a stark reminder that even institutions claiming to act in the name of good are not above the law. Justice, it seemed, had finally been served. Section 2. Picking up the pieces, the aftermath of deception. The revocation of the rehab center's charity status marked a turning point, but it was far from the end of the story. The center, stripped of its funding and its reputation in tatters, was forced to close its doors, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shattered lives. Former patients, some still grappling with addiction, were left to pick up the pieces, their trust shaken, their recovery jeopardized. Many felt betrayed, their vulnerabilities exploited, their hopes for a fresh start dashed against the rocks of deception. Families torn apart by the center's manipulative practices struggled to rebuild their lives, the scars of betrayal and broken trust running deep. The road to healing was long and arduous, paved with anger, grief, and a profound sense of loss. The community, once so quick to embrace the rehab center's mission, grappled with a sense of collective betrayal. They had opened their hearts and their wallets only to be deceived and taken advantage of. The scandal left an indelible mark, eroding their faith in institutions and highlighting the importance of vigilance and critical thinking. Section 3. A call to action, protecting the vulnerable. The story of the Scientology-linked rehab center is a stark reminder that even in the realm of healing and recovery, darkness can lurk in the shadows. It highlights the importance of asking tough questions, demanding transparency, and holding institutions accountable for their actions. This isn't just about one rehab center or one organization. It's about protecting the vulnerable, those who are often targeted by those seeking to exploit and manipulate. It's about being vigilant, recognizing the signs of deception, and speaking out against injustice. We must demand better from those entrusted with the care of our loved ones, from those who claim to offer a helping hand. We must be their voices when they are silenced, their advocates when they are ignored. This is a call to action, a plea for awareness, and a commitment to creating a world where healing is synonymous with honesty, where compassion trumps greed, and where the vulnerable are protected, not preyed upon. A legacy of harm. The true cost of the Scientology-linked rehab center's deception becomes painfully clear. Broken promises, shattered trust, and lives forever altered by profit and ideology over genuine care. The center's legacy is one of harm, its name forever etched in the minds of those who were lured in with promises of healing. The emotional scars run deep, a testament to the devastating impact of unchecked greed. Protecting the vulnerable. The story of the Scientology-linked rehab center is a cautionary tale, reminding us to remain vigilant in our pursuit of truth and justice. We cannot afford to be complacent or to silence the voices of those who have been harmed. This case underscores the importance of asking tough questions and demanding transparency. It is our responsibility to protect the vulnerable and ensure they receive genuine care. Let this story be a call to action for a world where compassion trumps greed.